Hey y'all, today I want to talk about marketing infrastructure and how to create one that is effective and removes all of the headaches that come with being a business owner. And let me clarify, whatever works for you, works for you. This is just my perspective. So join me on this journey. Starting with number one, your Google Drive or whatever drive system you use. In marketing departments, there's so many files of all type always being thrown around. Where do we organize them? The way that I do it, working files, so any of those design files like Adobe, where you want to have those actual files, I have those in their own folder. And then I have a folder for photos and videos, and I have a folder for strategy docs. And then for my clients, I have one that's client facing, so those PDFs, where it's like those deliverables that clients can expect every month. But of course, as they should, clients always get the working files as well, because they should own their own assets. And then the other piece with that is you really want to label your files and your folders in a way that is totally clear. Don't leave any room for error. I'll be so mad if you have a folder name miscellaneous, because that should never exist. Now let's talk about team structure and responsibilities. This is what I'm really passionate about. Every team member should have clear instructions on what they're responsible for and how they're measured for success. In meetings, who needs to be involved, who doesn't need to be involved, and who's the one taking the notes, who's the one actually executing, all of that needs to be established. And never just have a meeting to meet. In those touch bases, they're very intentional, they're structured, there's an agenda. I always say, if there's not an agenda attached to a meeting, you don't have to show up. Also too, it's important that with your project management system, I use Monday.com, it's clear on each of those tasks who's responsible for what. Don't just have a task where, 5 people are attached to. Who is responsible at the end of the day of getting that task over the finish line? Who truly owns that task? And the other thing, going back to Google Drive and just team members in general, people come and go at companies all the time. It's important to change your passwords yearly, but also after each person comes and goes, audit who has access to what. Remove people that no longer need access, and make sure that you transfer ownership over those files to the right person that comes in next. And that way you don't lose all of your amazing files that have been created previously. And along those same lines, make sure you're doing software audits. In marketing, we have access to 1 million tools and software, and not all of them are worth equal weight. So take a look, what is your team actually using? Even if they're good on price, there could be something better out there that you haven't used. So it's always a good idea to keep abreast to what new tools and software is out there so you can reevaluate and have better systems in place. And get rid of the rest. You never want to overpay for software you're not using or that's inefficient. It's also incredibly important for marketing departments to have a brand guide. So again, as team members come and go, this brand guide is like your Bible. It's how we're talking about the brand, how it should look like, what are the key messages, who are we talking to, who's our target audience, what are we offering them for a service or product, how do we use logos, what about photos, all that should be laid out on a brand guide. And take a look at that brand guide every 6 months to make sure that those messages and the visuals that you're putting out there, they still relate to the audience you're trying to serve and the way you're trying to serve them. Just because you made that brand guide in 2014 and you felt really good about it, doesn't mean that today in 2024, it's still gonna relate. And the same thing goes with your strategy framework. Yes, it's a framework for a reason, so it shouldn't have to change all the time. But as your goals change and your audience changes, it's a good thing to reevaluate. And with that too, as you're creating content, you should be creating new content monthly. New blogs, social media posts, emails, keep that audience engaged. Make sure you're updating your website yearly. And I'm not talking about a huge overhaul of everything. Update your content and your photos. Keep it up to date, interesting, and true to your brand. Because again, things change from year to year. And back to kind of the strategy talk, it's a good idea to look beyond the numbers that are just pretty and see, are you actually hitting the goals that you set out to hit? Look at your reporting monthly or however often you want, but make sure you're always knowing what's going on. And that means making sure that your Google Analytics or Google Search Console and everything else is up to date and functioning correctly. And then the last thing I want to share with you is that never settle, never get complacent, stay adaptable, remain curious, look at new tools all the time, keep in the know of what your competitors are doing, but most importantly, listen to your audience. That is your best source of information. So I hope this year in 2024, with spring in mind, that you organize your digital assets, you create clear team structure and responsibility, you make sure all of your accounts are secure and maintained, you review your strategy framework and your brand guide, and you update your website and all of the other content like your blogs and social too. And always look at that reporting learning and be willing to make changes along the way. I hope that helps. And remember that Hapacity Marketing is here to optimize your current infrastructure, or for new businesses, start a new one. Good luck.